Hello everybody, my name is Cypherlock and I have some exciting news to share with you. Apparently recently, someone managed to get a tour at Valve and an unofficial interview with Eric Smith. Eric Smith, if you don't know, is basically the only person left running TF2 now. He handles all the updates, coordinates things with the community, all of that. Yes, there is Joshy, who is an outside contractor who also handles like maintenance and all that, but other than them two, there's pretty much no one else working on TF2 that I know of. I've heard mention of there being a team, but not really any evidence behind that. Besides the point, someone managed to get an interview with Eric, which is absolutely insane. Valve is known to be very secretive and not provide any information for the community. So getting this is quite nice. I personally tried to get a Q&A going with Valve a while back. I think I ended up with getting 7,000 questions from the community, but unfortunately it got shut down by Valve themselves. I was going to have an interview basically with an employee, but Valve decided, no, we're not going to do that because it's not in an official capacity. We have people for that, which sucks, but we have this now. Apparently, someone managed to reach out to Eric because he had a map in the game already. So he's like, oh yeah, sure. Why not I just shoot a shot in the dark or something along those lines and see if I can get a tour? And he did. He provided pictures and everything of it, which I will show here throughout the video. But the most exciting part is a Q&A he had with Eric. It includes a lot of different questions, a lot of questions that the community had for a while, and Eric specifically has said that he's allowed to share. So I'm going to go through that with you. The first one, and one of the biggest things, is the summer update. Summer update currently is planned out right now. They are thinking about it, but it isn't going to be as big as last summer, which, if you remember last summer, we got V-Script game mode for the first time, and a lot of maps, like a hell of a lot of maps. I forget how many we got. It was like, what, 11, 12, something like that, which we continue to see in Halloween and Xmas. According to the Q&A, it's going to be smaller like other holiday updates. Eric also apparently mentioned that they would like to work on a lot of new things too, but they simply don't have the manpower. Valve is pretty spread in its employees right now, what with the Steam Deck and CS2 and a new game they're working on, which tracks with what I've heard before. I'm personally friends with a Valve employee with myself, and this correlates with Coraline. Oh, that's a movie. Coraline? Correlates. This correlates with what I've heard from them, with the Valve team wanting to work more on TF2, but simply not having enough manpower. But according to Eric, it has been mentioned of a new comic and some other white whale type stuff. I don't know what that means. From what I know, they've been discussing stuff like balance changes to weapons, new weapons potentially, stuff like that. I haven't heard anything about there being a heavy update or any like major update like Jungle Inferno, which kind of sucks. But even if we got an update like Blue Moon, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? But for now, it seems like for the summer update, they aren't planning anything big for that. The next part is how Valve picks maps. According to Eric, they just pick maps that seem fun and interesting, and all throughout the time period, so not just the recent ones, which kind of correlates with what I've seen in terms of patterns of upload dates and what they choose. From what I've heard, basically Valve tags different items and puts it into a tagged pool of items that are randomly generated. So for example, they will tag a bunch of like 20, 30 different items. This is just an example number. They don't just choose 20, 30 items, which go into a pool. Then when the update hits around, they randomly choose which ones from that pool are selected. So there is some kind of lottery, gambling, luck involved, but they do generally tag the ones that they personally like. Eric also claims though that there's internal playtesting with level designs and artists. It's one I'm not too certain about. Considering some of the maps we've gotten, this seems very unlikely. Like for, I think, Camber, how is it that for 3 or 4 times in a row, there has been an exploit to put sentries in spawn? Like you could literally just build a sentry in spawn. And in Cashworks, where you could just walk into the enemy spawn if you were on red team. That's not the kind of things that are typically overlooked by Valve artists and designers. I'm skeptical on this. Don't take my word for it, but I'm definitely going to take this with a grain of salt. Now, next is just miscellaneous things. Apparently, the 64-bit update was made by Joshy specifically. It was made mostly for maintenance and longevity, basically to keep TF2 going for as long as possible. and to make maintenance a lot easier, which makes sense. Josh is been in charge of maintenance and trying to make sure TF2 runs as perfectly as possible, which I'm excited for. I'm expecting the full release of 64-bit to be coming out in a month or two, is my guess. Don't quote me on that. That's what I'm guessing. For anyone that doesn't know, oh, by the way, 64-bit is a new system that TF2 will be running on. The beta is currently out for Windows and Linux. Essentially, it just means that we're going to have a great performance boost. I think upwards of like 30-40%, something like that. TF2 will just basically run better. There's better videos on it explaining it, like Shonix. Now, there are also questions about his personal life, which I'm not going to go into. So if you want to read through that, feel free. The only big thing that I've noticed is that Eric does read all his emails that come through, which tracks with what I've seen. Every time I've tried reaching out to Eric, I've gotten a response back. And lastly are just impressions from the person who did get an interview. Eric apparently does seem enthusiastic about TF2, which makes sense. Eric genuinely does care about TF2. Whatever people will say and to shit on Valve, that's Valve as a corporation. Everything that's happening to TF2 right now is not Eric's fault. Eric is doing all he can as one person. Two people if you include Joshy. There's not a lot you can do with that little manpower. It's simply Valve as a corporation. The next big thing is that TF2 is apparently worked on as an as-needed basis, with people coming in and out rather than active development. This makes sense, as this is typically how Valve's structure goes. When a project is underway, people will just come in and out during the project to work on what they need to do for it, rather than just commit to it as a whole. Eric is the anomaly and strictly works on TF2. He also works on other things, I believe, for Valve, such as coding and programming, but he specifically stays on TF2, either out of his own volition, I don't know what. And apparently Eric also seems smart with handling cameras. Don't quite know what that means. Cool, I guess. And finally, this is an interesting one. Open Fortress and TF2 Classic. These, if you don't know, are open community projects, basically doing different things. TF2 Classic is kind of like a beta reimagination of TF2, what TF2 will look like back in beta if it got continued forward. So you saw stuff like VIP mode, weapons like a brick or the needle gun for scout, stuff like that. Open Fortress is kind of like, not battle royale, just open arena game mode. I don't have much experience with that, but there has been a lot of controversies. Eric apparently is adamant that they haven't forgotten the arrangement and are currently working on it. I don't know what arrangement they are talking about with it. From what I know, Valve wanted to shut down TF2 Classic and Open Fortress, but I would love to know. If you happen to know, let me down in the comments. And apparently, Eric is wanting to finish this arrangement sometime this year. I have no idea genuinely what this means. My guess is that TF2 Classic Open Fortress are going to be supported in an official capacity Valve may have, such as like a mod on Steam, such as the Portal Revolution or Portal Mel Story, stuff like that. Basically fan projects that are posted officially on Steam. Not technically endorsed by Valve, but kind of stuff like that. COVID apparently seemed to have sidetracked this, as this does generally align with the time frame of when TF2 Classic got the notice to be shut down. So I'm interested in seeing how that progresses. That's interesting. Overall, this is though very exciting. People very rarely get tours of Valve anymore ever since COVID. They used to do tours pretty often. I think like weekly they would do it, but nowadays they pretty much never do tours. But apparently the person who did is a mapper for the community and just sent Eric an email and asked, hey, can I come get a tour? And he did. I wonder if I can do that. I got an effect in, right, Eric? Come on, just let me in. I want to see that cool sentry or that weird ball of Steam Deck. What do all of you make of this? I only learned about this about an hour ago, so I'm still trying to simmer in my brain what this really means for the community. I might make a second video diving deeper into it. I will also leave a link for the thread in case all of you want to read it yourself. So yeah.